Tunde was born into unimaginable wealth, heir to one of Lagos's largest business empires. Everywhere he went, people bowed to his name, not to his heart. Expensive cars lined his garage, business leaders wanted to partner with him, and women dreamed of being his bride. But deep inside, Tunde felt an emptiness money could not fill. He longed for something rare, something priceless, true love. Did it still exist in a world where wealth often blinded hearts? Or was every smile he received only a mask for greed? His fiancée, Amara, was admired for her beauty and elegance. She often swore her love for him was pure, but doubts clouded his heart. He had seen her eyes glitter more at jewels than at his presence. And so, a plan was born. Tunde decided to bury his identity and disguise himself as a man who had nothing. He traded his designer suits for torn overalls, his perfumes for the scent of engine grease, and his luxury cars for a dusty roadside workshop. With grease-stained hands and a tired look, he became a mechanic that no one would recognize. This was not a joke to him. It was a test of love stronger than gold. Day after day, he worked by the roadside, fixing broken-down vehicles, pretending to earn coins to survive. He waited for the right moment, the moment his fiancée would cross paths with his disguise. He imagined every possible reaction. Would she smile kindly at him? Would she offer even a word of encouragement? Or would her pride crush any chance of compassion? The sun was setting one evening, and sweat ran down his face as he tightened bolts on an old car. Suddenly, he saw Amara's car slowing down in the distance. His heart pounded like a drum. He knew this was it, the moment when truth would step out from the shadows. As her car stopped just a few steps away, Tunde wiped his greasy hands on a rag and waited. The air grew heavier, the noise of the street faded, and only one question echoed in his mind. Would her love see the man, or just the rags? Amara was the kind of woman who turned heads everywhere she went. Her beauty was undeniable. Smooth skin, graceful walk, and a smile that could light up any room. But what made her even more admired was her engagement to Tunde, the billionaire every woman in Lagos wished for. She often told her friends how blessed she was, how her life was destined to be a fairy tale. The diamond on her finger wasn't just a ring, it was her crown, and she wore it proudly. Whenever she gathered with her friends, her words danced around wealth, luxury, and the life she believed was already hers. She spoke of private jets, designer clothes, and the mansion she would soon call home. To her, love and wealth were one and the same. When people asked if she loved Tunde for who he was, Amara always smiled confidently and said, "Of course, my love for him is pure." But her heart told a different story. Her eyes sparkled whenever she walked past high-end boutiques, her steps slowed when she saw a new luxury car on the road, and her voice softened when her friends mentioned power and influence. She didn't see wealth as a blessing, but as her identity, her security, her pride. At night, when she looked at her engagement ring under the glow of her lamp, she whispered promises to herself, not of sacrifice, not of loyalty, but of the endless luxuries the future held. She dreamt of hosting lavish parties where everyone would envy her position. In her mind, marrying Tunde was not just about love, it was about stepping into the highest seat of society. Yet behind her polished smile, Amara's truth was simple. She didn't know how to separate Tunde the man from Tunde the billionaire. She believed her love was strong, but it was love wrapped tightly around riches. To her, money was proof of devotion, and comfort was proof of care. Her friends admired her confidence, but some quietly wondered if her heart would remain steady should all that wealth vanish. Amara never entertained the thought, because in her world, wealth was eternal, and her future was secured. It was a hot afternoon, and the streets of Lagos buzzed with honking cars and impatient drivers. Among them was Amara, seated comfortably in her sleek car, her makeup flawless, her nails polished like glass. She had no idea that her car trouble wasn't an accident, but part of Tunde's hidden test. With a small twist of fate arranged behind the scenes, the engine sputtered, coughed, and finally went silent in the middle of the road. Amara's eyes widened in disbelief as she tried to restart it, but nothing worked. Furious, she stepped out, the sun glaring against her jeweled earrings, and waved her hands impatiently at the nearest roadside mechanic. There he was, Tunde, disguised in grease-stained overalls, his hands darkened with oil, his face carrying the sweat of hard labor. He looked up at her slowly, his heart pounding, though his voice remained steady. Amara didn't recognize him. To her, he was just another poor mechanic who smelled of petrol and dust. She marched towards him, her heels clicking against the pavement, and said sharply, "Hey, you! Come here and fix this car quickly. Do you even know what you're doing?" Her words cut like knives, filled with arrogance and impatience. She looked at his dirty clothes with disgust, pulling back slightly, as if the mere sight of him offended her. "This is why I can't stand this kind of job," she muttered loud enough for him to hear. "Always sweaty, always smelling like the street. Do you even understand cars, or are you just pretending?" Tunde forced a faint smile, hiding the storm rising inside him. He bent down to check the car, but Amara wasn't done. She folded her arms and said loudly, "I could never live with a man who works like this. Grease and dust. No, thank you. Some men are born for wealth, others are born for scraps. That's life." Every word she spoke pierced his heart, but he stayed silent, tightening a bolt here, adjusting a wire there. Around them, passers-by glanced curiously, some shaking their heads. Amara didn't notice. She only saw a poor mechanic beneath her, and Tunde, standing in silence, saw her pride more clearly than ever. The afternoon heat pressed heavily on the busy street as Tunde bent over Amara's car, his hands buried deep in the oily engine. Sweat rolled down his forehead, mixing with the grease already smeared across his skin. He worked quietly, every turn of the wrench a battle against the storm raging inside him. Amara stood nearby, her arms crossed, her eyes darting between her broken car and the man she believed was just a poor roadside worker. Instead of gratitude, her lips curled with disdain. "Look at this," she said loudly, making sure the people walking past could hear. "This is why I thank God for blessing me with Tunde. Can you imagine me, the future wife of a billionaire, ever being with a man like this, covered in grease and dust?" Her friends, who had accompanied her, giggled, feeding her pride. Passers-by slowed their steps, some frowning at her arrogance, others curious to see what drama was unfolding. Amara's voice grew sharper, cutting deeper with every word. "Men like this spend their lives crawling under cars, begging for coins. They are burdens to society, living in dirt. Honestly, even talking to him feels like lowering myself." She waved her hand dismissively, as if Tunde's very presence was an inconvenience. Each word stabbed at Tunde's heart, but he did not speak. He kept working, tightening bolts with trembling fingers, his silence louder than her insults. His chest felt heavy, not from the labor, but from disappointment. He had hoped, perhaps just a little, that she might show compassion, even to a stranger. But her pride stood taller than her love. One old man passing by stopped to shake his head. "Daughter, pride has no crown," he muttered, but Amara ignored him. She flipped her hair, smiling proudly at the attention she was gathering. Tunde finally stepped back, wiping his greasy hands on a rag. His eyes met hers for a brief second, filled with pain she could not read. Amara only smirked, turning back to her friends. To her, he was invisible. To him, her true heart was no longer a mystery. Amara's living room glittered almost as much as she did. Expensive curtains framed the windows, Soft music played in the background, and trays of snacks sat untouched on the glass table. Around her, a group of friends leaned in, eager to hear every detail about the most talked-about event in Lagos, the engagement party of Amara and Tunde, the billionaire heir. Amara, dressed in a silk robe, couldn't hide her excitement. Her eyes sparkled, her hands moved dramatically, and her voice carried the pride of a queen preparing to sit on her throne. "Ladies, you have never seen anything like this," she said, flashing her diamond ring under the light so it caught every gaze. "The hall is being decorated with roses imported from Paris. The chandeliers alone cost more than some people's entire houses. When you walk in, you'll feel like you've stepped into heaven." Her friends gasped in admiration, whispering to each other. Amara soaked in their envy like a warm bath. She went on, painting pictures of the golden stage, the designer gown she had ordered from Milan, and the endless buffet of delicacies. "I will be the envy of every woman in this city," she declared proudly. "Not just because of the wealth, but because I am marrying into greatness. Tunde isn't just a man. He is power, influence, and a future that only queens deserve." Her friends clapped and giggled, praising her good fortune, though one or two exchanged doubtful glances. But Amara didn't notice. Her mind was consumed with visions of applause, flashing cameras, and the look on people's faces when she arrived at the event. For her, the party wasn't a celebration of love. It was a display of wealth, proof that she had secured a life above others. As she leaned back into her couch, sipping her drink with satisfaction, she whispered to herself, "This is the life I was born for." In that moment, her heart revealed its truth, not beating for Tunde, but for the riches his name carried. The afternoon sun burned hot over the city as Tunde, still dressed in his disguise as a poor mechanic, walked slowly along a quiet street. His clothes were worn and stained, his face unshaven, and his steps heavy as if carrying the weight of poverty. Ahead, he saw Amara stepping out of a boutique, her arms filled with shopping bags, her smile wide as she admired her new purchases. Tunde's heart beat faster. This was the second test. He approached her humbly, lowering his voice to sound weary, and said, "Madam, please, can you spare me a little food or small help? I have not eaten all day." Amara froze, her smile vanishing into a scowl. She looked him up and down with disgust, as though his very presence insulted her. "You again?" she snapped. "Didn't I see you working on cars the other day? And now you're begging? Honestly, men like you are the problem with society." She shifted her bags onto one arm and waved him away. "Poor men are a burden. Instead of working harder, you people beg and drag others down. Do you expect me, a woman about to marry into wealth, to feed beggars from the street?" Her words were sharp, meant to cut, and they did. Tunde's chest tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. His silence was his shield. Around them, a few pedestrians stopped, listening quietly. Among them was an old woman with a weathered face, her wrapper tied neatly around her waist. She watched the scene unfold, her eyes filled with wisdom and sadness. She shook her head slowly, sighing as Amara's arrogance spilled into the open. Amara adjusted her dress and turned away, muttering loudly enough for all to hear, "I will never waste my life on someone useless." Her heels clicked proudly on the pavement as she walked off, leaving Tunde standing in the dust. The old woman shuffled closer, resting her hand briefly on Tunde's arm. "Son," she whispered, "wealth can hide the heart, but the truth always shows." Tunde nodded faintly, his heart breaking, but his test was complete. The evening sky over Lagos glowed with golden lights as luxury cars pulled up one after another in front of the grandest hotel in the city. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, golden drapes, and tables decorated with roses imported from abroad. The sound of violins floated through the air as guests in glittering outfits filled the hall. It was not just an engagement party, it was a display of wealth, power, and class. At the center of it all was Amara, stepping into the room like a queen arriving at her throne. She wore a gown that shimmered with crystals, her hair perfectly styled, and diamonds glistening at her neck and wrists. Every step she took was slow and deliberate, meant to catch attention. And it worked. Guests whispered to one another, their eyes following her proudly raised chin. "That's Tunde's fiancée," one guest murmured with envy. "Look at her dress. Look at that ring." Another added, "She's marrying into unimaginable wealth. She has won the lottery of life." Amara's lips curved into a satisfied smile as she soaked in the admiration. She moved from table to table, greeting guests with practiced elegance. Each time someone praised her beauty or her fortune, she responded with a smile that revealed her pride. In her mind, this night was proof that she had secured her place in the highest circle of society. She imagined the photographs appearing in magazines, the gossip that would spread across the city. Tonight, she was untouchable. The music swelled as waiters carried trays of champagne and chefs unveiled golden dishes. The room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and envy hidden beneath polite smiles. Amara raised her hand to adjust her necklace, her diamond ring flashing under the lights, as if reminding everyone that she was now beyond their reach. She did not notice the small storm building quietly behind the curtains. She could not imagine that the very foundation of her pride was about to crumble. Unaware of what awaited, Amara stood tall in the center of luxury, convinced her future was set in gold. The music in the grand hall reached its peak. Glasses clinked, and laughter echoed as Amara stood in the center, glowing with pride. She greeted guests with elegance, her diamond jewelry flashing under the chandeliers. The crowd admired her, whispering about the luxury of the party, certain this night marked the beginning of her perfect future. But suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The doors at the far end of the hall opened slowly, and all eyes turned. Tunde walked in, not in torn overalls or with grease-stained hands, but in a perfectly tailored suit that shone under the lights. His presence commanded silence, his confidence filling the room. The laughter died, the whispers faded, and every gaze fixed on him. Guests gasped, their jaws dropping as they realized something unusual was about to happen. Amara's smile faltered for the first time, confusion flickering across her face. He walked past the tables, his footsteps steady, his eyes locked on her. The silence deepened, and finally, Tunde's voice rang out, calm but strong. "Good evening, everyone. Many of you know me as Tunde, heir to this empire. But recently, some of you, especially my fiancée, have met me in a different form. A poor mechanic, covered in grease, with nothing but my hands to survive." Gasps swept the hall. Amara's face turned pale as her friends exchanged shocked looks. Tunde's words cut through the air like a blade. "Yes, I disguised myself to test if love could survive without wealth. I wanted to see if my bride-to-be could look beyond riches and see the man within." He paused, his gaze piercing Amara. "But instead of kindness, she gave me cruelty. Instead of compassion, she mocked poverty and laughed at struggle." The crowd murmured in disbelief, their admiration for Amara melting into judgment. Some guests covered their mouths, others shook their heads. Amara's hands trembled, her pride crumbling before her very eyes. She tried to step forward, but her voice caught in her throat. The truth was no longer hidden. Her heart had been exposed, and the entire hall now knew who she truly was. The hall stood frozen, every guest holding their breath as Tunde's words echoed through the grand space. Amara's face, once glowing with pride, now streamed with tears. Her hands trembled as she fell to her knees in front of him, her diamond bracelet clattering against the polished floor. "Tunde, please," she cried, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean those things. I was foolish. I was proud. Forgive me. I beg you." The crowd whispered, some shaking their heads, others pitying her sudden downfall. Amara clutched the hem of Tunde's suit, her makeup smudging as she wept openly. For the first time, she no longer looked like a queen surrounded by luxury, but like a woman stripped bare of dignity. "You are the love of my life," she sobbed. "I only wanted to be the best for you. Don't leave me. Please, I will change." Tunde's eyes burned with disappointment, though his voice remained steady. He slowly pulled his hand away from hers and looked around at the sea of guests. "No," he said firmly, his words heavy with finality. "Love built on wealth is no love at all. A heart that only shines when covered in gold is not a heart I can trust." The silence that followed was sharp, cutting through the hall like a blade. Amara's sobs filled the air, but Tunde did not bend. He stood tall, his presence commanding, his decision unshakable. "This engagement," he continued, his voice carrying across the room, "is over." Gasps erupted, some guests covering their mouths in shock, others murmuring with disbelief. Cameras flashed as the moment became unforgettable, sealing Amara's humiliation forever. She buried her face in her hands, her cries echoing in the grand hall that only minutes ago celebrated her triumph. Now, it was the stage of her greatest shame. Tunde turned and began to walk away, leaving the diamond ring, the guests, and Amara's broken pride behind him. His final words lingered in the air like a lesson etched into stone. True love cannot be bought, and tonight the truth has spoken. The hall was still echoing with Amara's cries as Tunde stepped away, his footsteps steady and unshaken. The crowd parted silently, allowing him passage, their eyes filled with awe and whispers trailing behind him. He did not look back. Each step he took felt like a release, a shedding of disappointment, and a declaration that his heart would never again be chained by false love. The chandeliers sparkled above him, but their light seemed dim compared to the resolve shining in his eyes. Outside, the night air was cool, a sharp contrast to the heavy atmosphere he had left behind. Tunde paused by his car, lifting his gaze to the sky. For the first time in months, he felt free. He had given Amara every chance to show compassion, to prove her love could stand without gold, but she had failed. Now, his heart knew the truth. Better to walk alone than be trapped in the arms of someone who only loved wealth. Inside the hall, the whispers grew into judgment. Guests shook their heads at Amara's humiliation, her tears staining the floor she once ruled with pride. But Tunde's voice lingered in their minds. Love built on wealth is no love at all. It was more than a rejection. It was a lesson, one that every guest would carry home, retelling the story of the billionaire who dressed as a mechanic to test love. As Tunde drove away, the city lights stretched out before him, not as symbols of riches, but as reminders of the journey ahead. He promised himself that one day he would find a woman whose heart saw beyond wealth, a woman who would value his soul above his fortune. Until then, he would wait. And as the screen fades, the narrator's words rise softly, like truth carried on the wind. Sometimes wealth hides in rags to test hearts, and the truth is revealed when gold turns to dust. It was the ending of one story, but the beginning of a greater one, the search for love that no riches could ever buy.